Hello. This week's topic is the Constitution, so please read Chapter 2 in the book before attempting to answer any written questions about this topic. But I wanted to talk briefly about the Constitution and why it's important. So, the U.S. Constitution is our governing document. It was written in the summer of 1787 in Philadelphia. And in Chapter 2, you'll read about the Constitutional Convention and about some of the compromises that were reached and so forth. And so, please make sure you pay attention to all of that in the reading. But I did want to talk about a couple of features of the Constitution that are important. First of all, it does contain a supremacy clause, which means that the U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of our country. And all laws in the country, whether they're federal laws passed by Congress or laws passed at the state and local level, must fit with what's in the Constitution. So states and the federal government are not allowed to pass laws that go against something in the U.S. Constitution. That's what the Supremacy Clause is about. The Constitution also contains a system of checks and balances. In the reading, the authors referred to the Madisonian model, which was a way of having different branches of government checking and balancing each other or limiting each other. So you'll read about that in the reading. But certainly the idea that the president can veto bills passed by Congress, the Congress can override vetoes the president has issued on a bill, and the Supreme Court and the other courts have the authority to strike down laws and declare them to be unconstitutional. Also, you'll read about other examples of checks and balances, such as the Senate's authority to confirm presidential appointments, the ability of the Senate to ratify treaties negotiated by the president, and also some of the other important checks and balances. The spending power, for example, is one that Congress exercises, and Congress has the authority to declare war. With regard to checks and balances, some people think that it can be frustrating, and certainly presidents oftentimes feel this, and our recent presidents certainly have experienced this, where they've wanted to do something, but they haven't been able to get Congress to agree to it. Or there have been times when the courts have struck down laws that Congress and the president both agreed to, and so that can be frustrating for Congress and the president. But the thing is that the role of the court is to rule on the constitutionality of laws. The role of the president is to decide whether he or she agrees with legislation passed by Congress, and if the president disagrees, it's his or her responsibility to veto that. And of course, the Congress under our Constitution does have the ability to override vetoes if there are enough members of Congress who believe that that law really should be passed and are willing to override the president's veto. So the checks and balances system has generally worked pretty well over time, but there certainly have been complications, and some people think that in recent years the system has not worked as well as it should. So make sure you understand what that system is all about. The authors also discuss the amendment process, the process by which the Constitution can be amended. Constitutional amendments are changes that are made. The framers of the Constitution put in a two-step process to amend the Constitution. The first step is proposal. Usually proposal is done by Congress, a two-thirds majority of the House and Senate. But an alternative way to propose amendments is for two-thirds of the states to call for a constitutional convention. However, we have not had a constitutional convention since the original one in 1787, but that method of proposal does still exist. Once the amendment has been proposed, it has to be ratified. That means approved by the states, and there are two methods by which the states can ratify amendments. The first is for 3/4 of the states to approve the amendment through their state legislatures. So, for example, here in Michigan, our legislature meets in Lansing, and so the Michigan legislature would vote on whether to approve the amendment passed by Congress. And if Michigan approved it, then it would be one of the 38 states that would be needed. 38 is the number out of 50, 3/4 of 50. That's one way for an amendment to be ratified. The other way is for 3/4 of state ratifying conventions to approve the amendment. And that's a different method. It's similar in the number. It's identical in the number, 38 states, but instead of the amendment going to the state legislatures, Congress would send it to ratifying conventions. So, but once an amendment has been approved by Congress and approved by the states, it becomes a part of the Constitution, and when the courts are ruling on what the Constitution means, they have to include the amendments as well as any other part of the Constitution. unless some provision of the Constitution has been repealed at some point by an amendment. The idea of amendments is to make the Constitution somewhat flexible so that the framers recognize that they might not anticipate all of the issues that would come up in our history, and so this provides a way for Congress and the states to make changes, but they also recognize that because the Constitution is our supreme law, they didn't want it to be changing every 5 minutes, and so amendments are not easy to pass, but it is possible to approve them. There have been a total of 27 amendments in the history of the United States, but one thing to remember, and you'll see this in the reading, is that the first 10 amendments were the Bill of Rights, added in 1791, so that since 1791 there have only been 17 additional amendments. Most people would agree that the Constitution has worked pretty well over the course of our history. It's not been perfect, but certainly the fact that it's only been amended 27 total times and has survived pretty well over the years is a testament to the quality of the document the framers put together in 1787. Make sure you also understand the different roles of the branches and the levels of government. When we get into Chapter 3, we'll talk more about the system of federalism that was established in the Constitution. So if you have any questions, please email me, and have a great week. Thank you.